Hello, my name is Nathan Stuke from Wisper University. I'm the CEO of Wisper, and today we're continuing to talk to prominent business leaders around our industry. And we have Matt Collins with us from Calix. And I was talking to him earlier, just kind of prepping, and I love his stories. I love what he's got to share, and hopefully you will too. Just to remind everybody, if you have any questions, please put them in the comment bar. We'll get to as many of those as we can. And with that, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself. How'd you get to where you are today?
Sure. And by the way, I would say I love what you and your team and your whole ecosystem are doing as well. So I'm excited
Thank
to
you.
be here.
Yeah.
And so I am I've been at Calix for a little over 4 years. I am the CMO. I'm responsible for all marketing, field enablement, all of our business partner operations. But I also run commercial operations, I love that. I'm a pretty analytical guy. I love numbers. So we do all of our commercial strategy, deal reviews, pricing. A big important thing is we've built a whole new demand management and demand forecasting organization to go along with customer ops on my team. And then we do all of our field excellence, which is our IT platforms that we use to run our different lines of business. And so it's a great role. It's changed a lot. Some of it has changed very dramatically over the last year and a half with the pandemic that we're all struggling with. And I'm just thrilled to be a part of Calix and our community. To give you a little bit of background,
Please.
yeah, I started out actually in healthcare and pharmaceutical in the early 90s. And as the world of technology was changing in the 1990s, I was fascinated by it. And so I decided that I wanted to kind of remake myself and kind of get more focused on technology. So I actually went to business school. After business school, I joined a IT technology practice at a large consulting firm. And then I ended up jumping to my biggest client, which was IBM, and I spent almost a decade and a half there.
Wow.
I thought it was great grounding and training. One of the things that we did that I loved, I ran a joint program with our math sciences group, and we built all kinds of analytical models. We built our analytics function in IBM. And some of the things we did, for instance, is we did this great text analytic project when social media was taking off, and we were going out trying to find out who's influential and who's doing all this stuff. But all of those natural language processing algorithms actually ended up becoming the heart of IBM Watson. So the researchers who were working on that took that technology, put it to use in AI. And it was fascinating because I finally could explain to my children what I did. They were like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "My team helped build Watson."
Right.
Oh,
I taught the
Watson.
computer to think, right?
Exactly. The all-knowing, all-talking computer, right? That can beat Ken Jennings in Jeopardy. But what was fascinating at the time was all of these interesting people from like Google started showing up, and it was because they were trying to work with people to understand how to apply analytics to marketing. And I loved the sort of art side of marketing, but really starting in the mid 2000s, the whole science part of it took off, right? Analyzing customers, understanding their lifetime value, understanding, using analytics to understand what they're interested in. And so I moved into marketing. And that's where I have been focused for the last 15 plus 20, almost 20 years. But what was really big for me was I got a call from someone talking to me about Calix, a company I'd never heard of. And I was a little bit like, who? Calix? What? And then I kind of met Carl Russo, Michael Weening, a bunch of the other team leaders, and I became super intrigued with the company, and not just the people and the technology, but the mission. And one of the things that I loved about Calix was not just that it was smaller and I felt like I could have a bigger impact, but I loved that, they were dedicated, and Calix is dedicated not to serving, Comcast so they can do a better job in Miami or Los Angeles, but really 99% of our customers are focused primarily on rural and suburban environments. And in fact, close to 50% of them are not-for-profit, telephone co-ops, municipalities. And it's a very, very different thing. But whether our customers are for-profit or not, they share one common trait, which is they really want to do right by their community. And they're dedicated to help closing the digital divide. And so I wake up every day feeling like, I'm part of a company who's trying to help leaders like yourself and your community make a difference for their community, not just make another buck, right? And, I have nothing against that, but it's great because I feel like I'm part of something bigger than that, as well as that.
Yeah.
So that's what brought me to Calix, and
That's cool.
that's what I'm focused on.
That's awesome. Now you said something, and you said it twice,
Hmm.
that you're really, really into analytics and numbers
Hmm.
and everything,
Yeah.
but then you're in marketing. And
Yes.
usually I always joke that I want the creative people in my marketing department and the analytical people in my finance department, because if you have creative people in your finance department, you get Enron, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's how that debacle hall went down, is they had very creative people in their finance
Yes.
department. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. Talk about how, like, it was interesting. You said you were into the analytics and tech, and
Hmm.
then you got into marketing.
Yeah.
What was that transition like for you, or did you always have your lens was analytical, or what did you have to learn on that marketing side of things? Because that it seems
Yeah.
like a pretty big leap, right? Because people's brains kind of work one way and work the other. It's kind of neat that
Yeah.
you were able to do that.
Yeah, so I always say that marketing is the art of making the complex simple, right?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
and if you do a
Uh-huh.
great job,
Uh-huh.
compelling, right?
Right. Right.
And so you take our company and what we do, or what you and your team do, Nathan. It's not simple, right? Most people
Hmm.
don't natively understand, symmetrical services and how many, how many gigabits I'm
Gigawatts. This doesn't.
getting and
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And so when you're communicating, particularly to lay people about analytics, it's often very complex, right? You
Mm-hmm.
go try and explain to someone, the difference between linear regression and log regression and ARIMA models and all of that. But what you have to be able to do is boil it down to talk about the business process you're modeling and how the insights help make a better decision, which in a lot of ways is what creative marketers are doing. Okay, I've
Hmm.
got this really
Hmm.
complex problem I'm trying to help Nathan solve, and I've got a pretty complex solution to take that on. How do I boil it down? What's the value proposition, right? So the
Okay.
heart of leading in analytics, in some ways, kind of, I think, helped train me for what I needed to do from a marketing point of view. Um, the thing that changed with marketing was the actual application of analytics was becoming more and more
Hmm. Fair.
important,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so I felt like the training actually prepared me well for the core challenge of marketing. And look, there's always going to be the sort of artistic, creative element of marketing
Right.
that's just different. But I also found that quite interesting, right? Like, is the visual imagery helping to communicate the message that I'm trying to make? Does it confuse things? Does my logo communicate the value of what we're trying to do in a
Hmm.
subtle way? So it's different, but there's enough commonality in what it takes to be successful in both worlds that I found that training and background quite useful. Both
Wow.
how
Yeah.
we applied it, but also in how you communicate. If you're really effective in analytics, you need to be good at sort of articulating to a
Hmm.
layperson what the value of analytics are.
That's perfect. Okay, so you have successfully changed my stereotype of what a great marketer is. So I will give you
Well,
that.
hey, Nathan, I just want to tell you. So I was actually, the consulting firm I was at was McKinsey, and I was there when Enron melted down, and they were a client of ours. And I saw basically you had like 5 years of research that the whole firm had to throw out, right? Because it all
Right.
included Enron and it polluted the data. And so
Yeah.
I actually share with you that when it comes to finance, maybe they don't need to be that creative. I
Yes.
tend to agree with you because I saw the impact of that from a interesting angle, and it was pretty profound.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So we have a lot of listeners that are small businesses.
Yep.
That are, some of them are WISP, some of them aren't WISPs, and
Yep.
with your marketing background, and I love the analytics spin.
Hmm.
We always joke marketing wise, like if we thought it was a good idea, we were like anti-marketing people early on in
Hmm.
Whisper. So if we thought it was a good idea, we probably shouldn't do it. And if we thought it was a bad idea, we should probably do it. Um, what would be your recommendation to a small business that has a limited budget, that can't outspend the big guys on marketing? Where's that biggest bang for the buck, and just what
Yep.
would you recommend that they
So,
do and look into?
yeah, I think the number one message is actually one that we shared at Connections last year. We had Seth Godin on, who's a big luminary
Right.
in the field, and he talked about the power of segmentation, right?
Hmm.
And the goal here is not to target the most people or have the most spend, but find the most important segments and develop a message that really speaks to them. We had a customer who used data, right? They used the Calix cloud to analyze their customer base, and they found customers who had two things in common. One was there was a lot of gaming that was going on in their households, and 2 was they were hitting a lot of service limits, and they decided, hey, let's do a campaign targeting those gaming households, and very successful campaign. They did a 3-touch campaign. So they did email, social, outbound calling, and it was fascinating because they found that it turned out the majority of the people responding in their customer base to that campaign were grandparents. And
Oh, wow.
Heavy gamers.
Wait a minute.
Right? And so what it turned out was the grandkids were coming over to the grandparents' home, gaming, having a terrible experience, and the grandparents were thrilled. Like, you talk to the customer, they're like, they were thrilled for the call, thank you, and literally they had a take rate of about 60% on that campaign.
Wow.
And people were actually moving up on average 2 tiers in service because.
Holy cow.
And so the point is, this is a small service provider in Texas, but had a very personalized, data-driven approach, and reached out and connected with their customers. And what that had, this is the key thing I would say about that. Like all great marketing, it's so personal, it feels like a service. Those people didn't actually feel like they were being marketed to. They felt like this was a service, like you're calling to help me. Now, I know the service provider was thrilled because they got a lot more ARPU, customer satisfaction, fewer calls saying, what's wrong with my service? You go on down the line. But it all started with using data to identify very valuable segments that you could market to in a very personal way. And I always say that it's amazing what you learn when you actually listen to your data, right? And they were like, grandparents, wow, that's amazing. So my advice to the smaller service provider is use data, right? And the key is you don't have to be Google or Amazon, right? I mean, those companies, we all know they use data left and right. They do nothing without the analytics, and they spend.
Well, hey, if the product is free, you're the customer. So I'm just saying, if the product is free, know that all your data is being used for something, right?
Yes, absolutely. But the point is now there are tools that are democratizing this. So 10 years ago, you would have to hire a team of data scientists. You'd have to build bespoke data warehouses. You'd have to have a big master data management initiative. Now, how many companies can afford that, right?
Right.
I mean, you have to get to the point where you're looking at 1,000 employees, and we have customers who are big enough that they do have their own team of data scientists. And I would argue that even then, sometimes they'd be better off using, packages that were developed to help. But certainly, when you get smaller, you can't afford that. But on the other hand, you can no longer be effective if you're not using data. So my number one piece of advice is go out and find the tools, right? And again, I don't want to be too promotional, but that's a big part of what we are doing with our cloud solutions is trying to build things that allow smaller companies use the same kind of data science approach that those companies are spending hundreds of millions of dollars on, right? And we've seen some great results. And so my advice is go find the tools. They exist. You can take the same approaches. And when people do it, the results are unbelievable. And your customers will be so thrilled because, look, not only does it help in marketing, but it can also help in just support and customer service. And we all know
better service, right?
I mean, we all know that your customer is probably the only one who wants another truck roll less than you do, right? Do they want to have to sit at home and wait for the van, right? So as we've seen customers use these technologies, Nathan, we've seen their NPS scores, which is an important measure of satisfaction, go through the roof.
Wow.
Right, like literally going up to, we have customers with an NPS of 80%, 75%, 70 of 80 of 70, and so, and our industry average is right about 0. That means on average, most people are detractors of their service provider, as many as are promoters.
Right.
That's pretty, So instead of a 0 or a 1 or 2, 70, 80. So again, I couldn't say it anymore. Go figure out how to use data to make your marketing more efficient, but more importantly, more effective.
Yeah, I love that, because we struggled early on when you asked me like who our target market was or who we were trying to get to. I'm like, well, anybody that breathes, because everybody needs internet, right? So
Yep.
we had this real block in our head trying to think of like, well, I don't mind having the grandmother as my customer, and I don't mind having the soccer mom as my customer, and I don't mind having, so we want them all because everybody needs service.
Yep.
But I totally get what you're saying, is that, focus on some of them, and you can focus on one, and then the next couple months you focus on another one, and that message that you're getting across. And I love your guys' tools and what it allows us to see and do, because you're right. I don't like the pushy sales, right? I don't
Yep.
like the, let me send you 10 different pieces of mail and I'm going to
Yep.
bait and switch you. I'm going to convince you need this when you don't really.
Yep.
We sell what the customer needs, but especially with your guys' tool, your marketing cloud, we can see what customers actually need it versus the
Mm-hmm.
customers like blanketing everybody. So
Yep.
I think
Yep.
that's great. I think that's
Well,
great.
and I would, what you described though, the way I would phrase it is, you described a lot of customer subscriber personas, right? And that's a big
Mm-hmm.
effort that we do it in our marketing. We're encouraging our customers to do, which is, to your point, what you want to do is maximize the value you're creating for all those personas, whether they're the technology challenged who just want a basic Wi-Fi broadband service that works, whether they're a gamer, whether they're a streamer, whether they're, like me, I'm working from home and I have 3 kids who do Zoom school from home, and I've got 4 simultaneous video streams, and
Right.
I'm willing to pay a lot to get really good service. The
Yeah.
point is, we all have different needs, and you use the data so that you could most effectively serve those different personas, which maximizes their value and then subsequently your value capture, right? And that's ultimately the game, right? We want to serve as many as we can, and you win when you match up your service to their specific needs. And I'm seeing a lot of service providers getting much better at speaking at their subscribers in those terms. I know you're a gamer. I know you work from home. I know your kids love to stream video. You all have different needs. And the winning service provider is the one who finds out how to best meet those individual needs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So let's shift gears just a little bit.
Yep.
And I love talking to people who are dealing with supply chain issues.
Yep. Yes.
Because you read the reports, you see the ships stuck in the Suez Canal.
Yeah.
You hear, sometimes we can't get the products we need, so we're calling in like air shipping. What do we need to do? How do we need to do it? We're pivoting to different products. But you're a manufacturer and you have customers that are demanding. So what have you seen, and just some of the cool things that you've got, and then how are you guys kind of dealing with
You bet.
some of the issues?
So I would argue that this is the biggest operational challenge that we at Calix are focused on. And it's one of the biggest challenges that service providers are facing, right? I mean, your world's a little bit more complex, but you having supply of the things you need to serve your customers is a huge challenge for you. And so it's our number one priority. And, I'll just start by saying, here's the good news. As an industry, we're getting to the point where everyone recognizes that we're all in this together, right? COVID hits a factory in Shanghai or in Taiwan or wherever, and certain component supplies go down for 3 weeks because the factory shuts down. There's nothing that you or I or any of us can do to control that, right? And it's happening all over the place, all industries. Just go try and buy a Ford Bronco, right? Right.
Yes.
And so everyone, what I'm seeing in our industry is everyone's recognizing, okay, this is an industry problem and we have to band together to address it. So at Calix, really starting in May, June of last year, we did 3 things that I think were really important. The first thing is we went out to get a lot of resources to go invest in building inventory. So we actually had our first public offering since we went public over a decade ago, to go raise capital for the purpose of investing in inventory, right? And that was a big financial commitment that we made. Related to that, we're investing a lot in air freighting, right? That's a big thing,
Yeah, I read an article that it's booming, right? I mean, the internet industry is booming, but air freight, it's like, fill the planes and get them over here. Get them over here now. It's like, holy cow.
And it's unbelievable. So how much energy goes into, like, how many boxes of Gigaspires can you fit in a plane? It's incredible. And it's very expensive, but that's, again, we're making the financial commitment to do everything we can. The second thing is we did tremendous efforts in changing our processes. So a group of us, actually, myself, Michael Weening, Mehdi Brett Berdarin, who's on our team, we actually took a supply chain course at Wharton, right? And went and said, look, we're going to go spend the time, hear the latest and the greatest. How can we tackle this challenge? And then we put it to work. We actually built a whole new demand management and demand forecasting process because, Nathan, a lot of these components, like some of the chips from Broadcom, Qualcomm, 56-week lead times.
Yeah.
I mean, literally.
Yeah.
So we built a forecasting process where we're now projecting what we need into fourth quarter of next year. We're now doing 18, 20 more 4-month forecasts. And we had to deploy a whole new supply chain technology infrastructure. We used a product called Vanguard. We built these whole new processes internally where every day we're working with customers and the sales team and getting the information.
Yeah, so you're not just trying to get me to order more product then.
No.
Okay, so you really want me to put in my numbers so you can.
Thank you.
Okay,
well, you just hit the number one thing, right? And this is really important. Is we're now actually trying to work with our customers to say, hey, give us a sense of what your business plans are and where you want to go, so that we understand that, you know, in 18 months, this is what you think you need, and in 12 months, and in 6 months. Now, obviously, what you think and know you need in 2, 3, or 4 months is much better. But if you give us an idea that, like, hey, we're going to expand into this community in 12 months, and great, we can start. And so the third thing is really that partnership. So we invested in a group called Customer Operations, who works with our sales team, and all they are doing is, not all, but mostly what they're doing is working with people like yourselves and your team and saying, tell us what your needs are, help us build it into our forecast. And then we're literally going to component suppliers and others and saying, look, we're so confident in what we're doing that we're actually going to put an order in for something in 18 months. Right. Wow. And then we're claiming that supply chain. And it's interesting, Nathan, if you look at the numbers, you go back to June of last year, 75% of our orders were asking for shipments in less than 3 months. Okay. June of this year, it's down to less than 30% of our orders.
Oh, wow.
Right, because people are now saying, okay, yeah, I actually think in first quarter of next year I'll need this. Now, again, that doesn't eliminate issues because factories can go down, component suppliers can just go, you know, dark for a month. This stuff happens.
Right.
But it really minimizes the chance that they'll knock on. And we're down to the point where we just have about a dozen products, maybe a little more, that we're really like working daily to try to make sure the rest of our portfolio, we've got it under control, we've got plenty, and we work it daily with our customers. So process, investing dollars, we brought in, you know, some new leadership. Jerry Cederlin's our new senior vice president for managing some of this on the supply side. Right. And then a whole new process to work with our customers to say, you know, help us understand your plans more. And I think working together, we will ride out this challenge as effectively as we can. There will be bumps, but I don't see any reason why we can't continue to work it. And the number of issues we're working with customers, they still come up a lot, but the number of issues has gone way down just because of that planning.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I get to see different companies, and I hear the stories of, well, this 5-cent component, you know, used to have a 30-day lead time. Now it's a $5 component, and it's got a 50-week lead time. You know, and they're always scrambling. And I would have to give Calix kudos because I've worked with other manufacturers that it's like, nope, sorry, nothing we can do. You know, we tried our best, and you don't hear that they went out and hired more people. They don't hear that they really kind of work the supply chain. They just kind of said, well, it's COVID, it's what it is. And like, okay, COVID is not an excuse. COVID is a situation we're in.
Yes.
I still need my product, especially in the internet world, right? I mean, internet is finally, the rest of the world is finally realizing what I've realized 18 years ago is that the internet is super, super important and everybody needs it. You know? So I don't get to just say, well, you know, COVID, I couldn't do the install because I don't have a router for you, or I don't.
Yes. Well, your customer need, right? Their need is the greatest it ever was. So to your point, this is the last time that you want to be sort of like, hey, I can't help you out, right? It's going to be, and we're very sensitive to that. I mean, and Nathan, I know you've heard Michael Weening, our president, say
Mhm.
this, the win-win, right? We are 100% dedicated to, we only win if our customers do. And if you can't meet your subscribers' needs, and then you don't win. And so, that leaves us losing with you. So that's where
Right.
we don't for a second accept this situation as a fait accompli, and we meet hours every day to, where can we go to buy that component? Can we get it on, someone who's not going to use it? We just had a conversation today where we found a whole bunch of components because someone was going to ship it to someone else, and they said that they didn't want it. But we're on the phone every day with all of
Right.
these suppliers. Hey, can you help us? Can you do this? Can we freight this? And that's the only way. That plus on the front end, working with all of you to say, help us understand your plans more so we can give more and more headlights to the
Yeah.
suppliers.
Yeah. And I think that's, it comes down to that partnership like you talk about, because
Yep.
it's, we say we have a partnership with our customers, and we do everything we can. And sometimes we fall down and sometimes we do really, really well. And
Yep.
I think you guys are showing a lot of what I would call big companies, which compared to Whisper, you're a big company. But
Sure.
a lot of big companies
Yep.
say they have a partnership. They say they do everything for the customer, but then when the bean counters get involved,
Yeah.
it doesn't quite work that way. It's like, wait a minute, I didn't ask for anything different. I just asked for whatever it is. So I think I've seen it where
Well,
you guys have really done that and done a good job of that.
well, thank you. I'll just say, we feel a great sense of reciprocal loyalty with
Mm.
our customers,
Yeah.
and that's really, to your point, this is what we live for. So I'm really, thank you for saying it, and that's really what we're into. And I would just say there are enough great companies out there that if you have a partner who doesn't feel like a partner, that's a good sign to go find
Mm.
someone else, right?
Yes. Now
Whatever it
is
is.
the time.
Yes,
Yes. Now is the time.
for sure.
Yeah. So the last topic I wanted to talk about, I've you guys have come and visited our office in person a ton.
Yep.
You guys are always right there, ready to meet with the customer. But then, in talking to you and a lot of other people from Calix, you guys are a full-on remote workforce,
Yes.
like really full-on, and have been for a long, long time.
Yes.
So I know a lot of us have scrambled, right,
Mm-hmm.
to get everybody to be remote,
Yep.
and
Yes.
no, we can't do remote learning, and no, we can't do all this, and it'll take decades. And then COVID hit, and we're like, all right, we're remote learning. This is how we do it, and we struggled. But
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the secrets you guys have been able to do to really make that the remote office work
Mm-hmm.
and work well? Because obviously you're a high performing company, you're high performing teams, and I don't ever get the well, I didn't talk to this person, I didn't know this,
Yep.
and but as a remote, you could kind of see where you would miss each other. What have you guys done, and what are maybe some things that companies could do to really maximize that
Yep.
remoteness, if you will?
Sure. And Nathan, it's interesting. When I was at IBM, I was in different parts of the company
Hmm.
where some were very remote, others were 5 days a week in the office. And I
Okay.
think that experience taught me that if you're committed, you can make any model work, right? These people are like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, no, it has to be this or that. The answer is, depending on what you want to do as a company, I'm convinced any can work. Now, to your point for Calix, our decision was well before the pandemic that we were going to embrace work from anywhere, right? So
Hmm.
before the pandemic, close to 70% of our employees did not work in a Calix office, like myself. I
Hmm.
tend to work from remote. Before the pandemic, I would be in, California once a month, maybe a little bit more, depending. But we really felt like it was a huge competitive weapon
Okay.
because it allowed us to go find talent wherever they were, right?
Hmm.
I feel no constraint. They can be in London, they can be in Vancouver, they can be in Florida, they can be in California, Texas, Vermont. By the way, all places where people reporting directly to me actually have been. In fact, the woman who I've known for many years runs demand generation for Calix.
Okay.
She and her partner split their time between Nova Scotia, Bermuda, and Lake Tahoe. They're big
Rough.
sailors.
So rough.
I know,
So rough.
very rough, right? When it gets a little cool, you go to Bermuda, then move on.
Yeah.
But the point is, I don't know where she is half the time, nor
Fair
do
enough.
I care, right? And for her, having the freedom to work from different places is a huge benefit, right?
Hmm.
And you know, just as long as she's getting her job done and communicating and all of that. And her story is not atypical. And so when the pandemic hit, we had a lot of work to do to help, manage our supply chain, help our customers do remote installs. But in the way we operate, we didn't skip a beat. Like one day we were on a Zoom, the next day we were on a Zoom, right? And that's just the way we were. And I think there's sort of, to do it successfully, there's sort of three key components. The first one is around technology and enabling your team to work. So everyone on our team, when they join, they get a great standing desk for home. They get a big monitor, different headsets, combos, set up so that they're not working in an environment that doesn't work for them. That extends to your point about communication, complete transparency. We use Chatter, which is an internal social network that Salesforce makes. All of our communication, we're very transparent. It's all on Chatter. Anyone can go find it. That level of transparency and using technology is key. The second one is sort of a process change, right? So we've all probably been part of environments where, you're remote on a telephone or on a Zoom, and there's 8 people in the room, and they're all around a conference table, and you're off there in kind of the background, and no one can hear you. They forget you're there. It's just, it doesn't work. So everyone has to embrace that, like, they're going to be like us. I'm looking into a camera, we're communicating. I can see people's hand gestures, their facial gestures. And you have to be very committed that every meeting that you have is fully embracing of people who are both present and remote. And it extends to things like Carl Russo said not too long ago. You would never show up for an in-person meeting with a paper bag over your head. So why would you show up to a Zoom meeting with your video off? Right. So we require every employee, you get on your Zoom meeting, your video's on, I can see you, we're communicating. And it's process changes like that embrace virtual, that really work. And then the third one is a real cultural component. You have to really trust your people. I hear these stories about companies that are installing like spyware on their people's laptop, and like you, if you want to succeed, you have to trust, and it starts with hiring, right? You have to hire people who don't need someone looking over their shoulder all day and telling them what to do. They have to be more independent, but you really have to hire people who you trust, and you have to trust them. It's a social contract that you build. And I literally spend zero time, not a second, ever worrying about, are my people doing their jobs? Are my people productive? Are they spending too much time on Amazon.com buying stuff? And I mean, it never enters my thought. And it's just culturally, we've been focused on hiring people we can trust, giving them trust, and them reciprocating. And I think if you do those three things, embrace the technology, arm your people, be transparent using it, make sure your processes support it so that people feel fully embraced. And then the last part, which is build a culture of trust, it can be a tremendous competitive weapon. As you probably know, Nathan, we've done quite well as a company over the last couple of years. And I think our embracing of work from anywhere has really been a difference maker for us. Attracting talent, keeping talent, making sure they're productive, and being very thoughtful and planful about it. If you don't do that, this is really painful. I think most of I would say the vast majority of our employees, I'm certain, prefer it.
Interesting. So you mentioned, that one-off person that's sitting off on the video camera that everybody forgot about. If you ever have in-person meetings and then somebody has to be remote, do you have all people be remote where you're like, nope, even if you're in the same office, you're going remote, to make it where it's kind of everybody's looking at the same thing? Or do you still keep a hybrid approach of some people in the room and some people remote?
Yeah. So many of our meetings before the pandemic were hybrid, right? So I was out regularly in San Jose, where our headquarters are, for operating reviews or board meetings. And almost all of them, the majority were in person, but there were some who were on, and it's back to the making them feel like full participants in the meeting, right? The video is present, it's visible, you're including them in the conversation. what I would say on this sort of going to full hybrid is if you reach a critical mass, like more than half the people or half the people are remote, you definitely would consider going. And we've done that. Like, hey, it turns out, we're going to have 9 people in this meeting. 4 of them are remote. Why don't we just go remote, right?
Okay.
But I think it's a judgment call. But without a doubt, if you do it right, it can work. The hybrid can be very effective. So we've had situations, many, where 12 people are in the room and 3 are remote, and they work fine. And we've also had situations where it gets to a point where, like, okay, 5 out of 12 are remote. Let's just go remote. But it's a judgment call.
Early on in the pandemic, we were all separated here at Wisper, and it was funny to be on a remote call and then hear through the wall the person that's in the office next to me, and then the person that's in the office in the other one, and then like they would start talking, and I could hear them talking, but they were muted. So it's like, oh, you're muted, but I can hear you.
That is funny.
So,
well, and we've had weird. So we reopened our offices in July. It just, we had shut them down because we were like, okay, it's just be safer. We'll reopen. And we've had people working, but it's funny to see someone who they're in the office and they're one of 3 people in an office that can hold 50 people.
Yes,
right.
Right.
That's always the interesting one where they take their cameras and they go, look, I'm the only one here.
Right. Yeah. So the last kind of question I have on the working remote, do you think you talked about hiring and you talked about hiring the right people, which I totally agree with. Do you think is it the position you're hiring for as well that leads to your guys' success in being able to do that? Are there some positions that you found in your career that really need to be in person, or any advice on there?
Yeah,
I
think need is a strong word.
Need.
I do think there are positions where, well, first of all, I would step back. I think most roles benefit from some in-person contact, right? Meaning, once a week, once a month, once a quarter,
to run into,
come to the office, have a meeting. And so when we were remote, we would do that very carefully. Let's get the team together on a cadence, right? Do a whiteboarding session. So, from a strategic point of view, after our operating reviews, Carl, Michael, myself, for those who don't know, some of our members of our executive team, we would get together and do a 4-hour whiteboarding session. And it's very hard to replace that remotely, but you don't need to be in the office every day to do that. Now, also, I think there are certain roles that require a lot of team collaboration and problem solving that benefit more from being locally located, that is. But, beyond that, I mean, look, we have people who are on the phone all day with customers who are at home. We have engineers working at home who come to the office, on periodically, but not all the time. So I do think that for your company, you look at some of those roles that require a lot of team collaboration and a lot of joint problem solving, they can benefit more. But I don't think there are many roles at all that like absolutely require it. I think it's a choice, and so we try to work through that model to really make sure that people who need to be in the office have periodic access on whatever cadence that needs to be.
Yeah, no, that's great. So this has been an awesome time talking to you. You've done 2 things. 1, you changed my stereotype of marketing people, so that's amazing.
Good.
2, I firmly believe in together is better and not being remote. I want everybody in the office. I want us to have those impromptu meetings, see people and everything. But you've given me enough information, enough examples of how you can make this work, and I think it's interesting to see how different people have done things successfully, and what I kind of come out of it is you have to be committed to it. You have to be intentional. You cannot just be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna let you. I mean, like when we had to all of a sudden go work from home, we had people that couldn't get to their shift on time. I'm sorry, you don't have to drive. All you have to do is roll out of bed and you still can't get to work on time. And that's an issue that has nothing to do with working from home and has everything to do with, personal discipline and not being able to get things going. So I can see if you say, no, our culture is this, and this is what we're going to embrace. I think it's really, really cool what you guys have been able to do.
And I think for most companies, even us, it's a mix, right? We still have people who are in person, but I think you think about it and plan it, as you said, creatively. And I'll just give you an example. And it's something that we knew, but our customers didn't realize. So here's an example where there's an advantage to being remote, hybrid, etc. So you have a problem, and we have a local sales team and solution engineering team that shows up. Well, we can very quickly get the top 15 experts from Calix on a Zoom call, right? I mean, we're never going to be able to get, every engineer, Michelle Langlois, who leads, our technology group, on a call. But customers have started to say, okay, we're comfortable with this. And so we can very quickly and easily assemble a team of 15 to help you solve your problem. Whereas in the old kind of in-person model, it might take us a month to find a date when everyone can get there and all that stuff. So if you think creatively, even where you are dominant one way or the other, you can probably find certain things. And we've said that to our sales team is you're back meeting with your customers, but a lot more of your interactions are going to be remote like this because there are situations where, quite frankly, it's just better.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely collaborate that story, because how many calls did you have with me from 7 o'clock at night till 10 o'clock at night talking about your guys' product and what I was evaluating? I mean, I remember my Zoom screen. There were 15 to 20 of you, including Carl. I mean, it was like, holy cow, they're really dedicated to solving my issues of what I was looking at. So you're absolutely right.
That's
you
right.
can do that.
And I can't tell you how much we love when prospects or customers want that, right? I want to really evaluate things. I want to meet with your team. And it makes it so much easier. So, I would just encourage everyone to, even if you say, look, I want to have people in person, I want to have that spontaneous collaboration, great. But think through, are there certain activities that might actually work better even in that environment remote?
Sure, absolutely. The one awkward thing I found is that as a CEO, when I want to have a meeting with you, if you're remote, I have to put it on your calendar to catch you. And it's like, ooh, wait a minute, a meeting with the CEO?
That's a good point, yes.
I put in the subject, it's all good. I just want to tell you kudos or something, but
sure.
you gotta get over that a little bit.
It's very true. And by the way, it's great that you're so self-aware, because I find sometimes senior leaders don't recognize that, and they'll send the email, and someone on my team will be going, their heart will be pounding.
No, I know. It's like if I have a Monday meeting, I never send the invite like that Friday, because even if it's for good, like, hey, I'm going to give you a raise, I want to have a meeting Monday, they're still going to fret about it all weekend.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And by the way, you can't replace that familiarity, because also when you're meeting with people regularly, that creates a familiarity that's hard to replicate over Zoom. So so that's why anyone who tells you one way is always better than the other, I don't buy it. I think there are trade-offs, and it's finding the right balance.
Right. Well, cool. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us. For everybody watching, thanks for watching. And remember, you can check us out on our YouTube channel and Facebook Live. And Matt, enjoy the rest of your week and weekend, and as the cool weather comes in with you up there. And we just appreciate you being on.
Thanks very much. Yeah, the leaves have already started to change.
Yep.
Thank you.